What's the first thing you think of when you hear the term holy war? Probably jihad. As a matter of fact, for much of Christian history, many of the battles that were fought in the Bible were called holy war. But because of the rise of radical Islam and people becoming familiar with the term jihad, we typically now call them Yahweh's wars. But I want to talk a little bit about this on today's Theology Thursday. The place we first encounter what could be considered Yahweh's wars or holy war is in the book of Joshua. But there's something fascinating that I think is very instructive for us in the way this material is organized that will help us understand the way God wants us to be involved in battles, not necessarily like physical going to war, but in spiritual battles. There's something very instructive here for the people of Israel as well that I think is good and instructive for us also. So in Joshua, the first dozen verses or so, the first 9 verses actually, Joshua is commissioned. Moses has died. Joshua's commissioned now to lead the people across the Jordan River into the Promised Land, and that in the Promised Land, then they are to take it and to settle it. And several times he's told to be strong and courageous and all those kind of things. Now, when we get to chapter 10, we run into, start in verse 10, down the end of chapter 1, we run into a problem, so to speak. There were 12 tribes, 13 actually, because Joseph has 2 sons, and each of them are considered a tribe, Ephraim and Manasseh. But only 12 of them are going to get land. The tribe of Levi will not have any land. The tribe of Levi, the priestly tribe, will be scattered around the other 12 tribes to teach them the law of God. And so the land's going to be divided into 12 allotments. However, Reuben and Gad, those 2 tribes, plus about half the tribe of Manasseh, have received permission to remain on the eastern side. They like it. And so here's a map of the way the 12 tribes were. And so these tribes were on the eastern side of the Jordan River, and this is where they're going to stay. And so a question arises, well, what about them? Like, they're already on the eastern side. What do they have to do? And so they are told, hey, look, you get this land, but you have to go into the land with us so that you can help your brothers conquer their territory. Then you can come back to your territory on the east side of the river. And so those are dealt with. So the entire first chapter is just dealing with the commissioning of Joshua and what we do with these 2.5 tribes that are on the eastern side of the Jordan River. So they're helping us to prepare, but no battle yet. In chapter 2, Joshua sends out 2 spies to check out the land. Now, it's interesting. Moses sent 12 spies, 1 from each tribe. They went and spied out the land. They came back. All 12 gave a great report. Man, the land is awesome. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. It'd be a great place for us to live. However, 10 of them said, as great as it is, we can't take it. No, we can't take it. The people are big. They're warriors. Their cities are on top of hills with walls around them. We can't do this. 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, said, no, we can take it. God will give us the victory. So because the people believed the report of the 10 spies rather than the 2, for the next 40 years, they remained in the wilderness. Joshua's not sending in 12. He sends in 2, and my guess is they're handpicked. And so he sends them in, and if you're spies in the land, you don't want to stand out. So it's very common in the ancient world, if you had people that were traveling, especially if you had some men that were traveling, when they would come into a city, they would go to a house of ill repute. They would go to the red light district. And so that's what these men do. It wouldn't draw any suspicion to them by coming into the city of Jericho. And then that's where they go, and they meet a lady named Rahab who runs this house of prostitution. Obviously, someone that does that probably has some officials that have frequented her establishment. She knows what's going on. Many times these are people that are not going to be loyal to their city or their country, and so they're more likely to give up information. So that's where the spies go. And so the entirety of chapter 2 is about Rahab helping these spies, giving them information, and the commitment that they make to her that her family be spared. So 2 chapters, but no battle yet. Chapter 3, now they cross the river. and we get a pile of stones in the middle of the river, a pile of stones on the shores. They can commemorate. The water is stopped. They cross during flood stage, and all the people go across, and the water starts again. So they begin this journey with the waters parted at the Red Sea. They end the journey with the waters parted at the Jordan River. And so that's all of chapter 3. No battle yet. Chapter 4. We're going to stop and basically have a worship service. And so they take these stones that they've piled up on the east side of the Jordan River, have a worship service to remind them that they've crossed into the land, to celebrate they're no longer in the wilderness, but they're now in the land. And so 4 chapters and no battle. Chapter 5. And we get 3 things that are going to happen in chapter 5. The first one is they're going to have a circumcision service. So in the first 9 verses, they circumcise the people because they have not been practicing circumcision during the wilderness. And God says, if you're going to live in my land, you're going to live my way. And circumcision is a sign of the covenant. So we have this circumcision. They call the place Gilgal, which comes from the word galal, because they rolled away the foreskin. And so literally Gilgal means the rolling away place. And there's actually a location there called the Hill of the Foreskins, where they piled them all up. I'm not sure that's what I would want the name of my neighborhood to be, but anyhow, that's what they do. Now, here's what's fascinating. They do this after they cross the river. They're right next to the city of Jericho. And we know that circumcision incapacitates soldiers for a few days. Circumcision was used by Israel's sons, Jacob's sons, after their sister Dinah was raped. And they told Shechem, well, if all the men in your city be circumcised, we'll let you marry her. And so they do. And while they are at the height of their pain on the second day, Simeon and Levi swoop down and kill all the men of the city. So they're putting themselves at risk here. Typically, you don't, on the battlefield, say, look, let's stop and incapacitate all of our soldiers. That's not the way most armies function. But God says, this is so important, I want it done right now. Right now. So we have a circumcision service. Then in verses 10 through 12, they have Passover. That's it. You know, again, on the battlefield, they say, wait, time out, we need a picnic. But that's what they do. They observe the Passover. So they observe the sign of the covenant, circumcision. They observe the sign of their deliverance from Egypt, the Passover. And then in verses 13 to 15, Joshua is scouting out the city of Jericho, and he encounters the angel of the Lord, who tells him, I'm going to give you the victory, and then gives instructions. So 5 chapters, no battle. We have a commissioning and what are we going to do with the tribes on the east? We have Rahab and her family spared. We have a crossing of the Jordan River. We have a worship service with a pile of stones. We have a circumcision event. We have Passover. We have Joshua scouting the city and encountering God here in human form. And I mean, it's just an amazing sort of, but no battle. Now in chapter 6, they're told, walk around the city once every day. Then on the 7th day, walk 7 times, and then shout, and the walls will come down. It's not until chapter 6, verse 15, that there's anything that could even be considered a battle. That's when the walls fall down and they go in and they capture the city. So this is what I want you to see from this arrangement. Okay? God's priorities are not our priorities. If we were going to go in to take the city of Jericho, we're going to, how many guns do we have? How many soldiers do we have? When's the best time to go? The sun rises in the east, so let's attack early in the morning when the sun will be in their eyes, but the sun will be behind us. We want to put troops here and here and here. We need the archers here. We need people with shields protecting them. How are we going to provide food for our soldiers and water while they're on the battlefield? How many days do we think the battle will be? I mean, sometimes we get so tied up in all the logistics of what we're doing for God's kingdom that we forget that God's priority is on Him. God's priority is on obedience to Him. God says, no, we're not going to do it the way the world does it. No. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get into the land, and then we'll stop for worship service. We're going to stop to circumcise all the soldiers. We're going to stop to celebrate the Lord's Supper. Not the Lord's Supper, but Passover. All of these things, because that's what's important. Our relationship with God is what gives us the victory. because they're obedient in all of these steps to God, God says, I'm going to give you the victory. And the victory comes from just going on a walk. So we face the same, I think, temptations that they did, to focus on all the logistics, all the can it be done, instead of focusing on my relationship with God, trusting in the power of God, being obedient, doing what God says in God's way, even when it doesn't seem the right and logical way. So when it comes to holy war or Yahweh's wars in the Bible, what we see is the focus is not on the battle, the focus is not on the victory, the focus is not on their strategy, the focus is on God doing it. And God does the victory when God's people do what he told them to do. That's basically the way it's lined out, and that's what we see here. So I just want you to see it because it is interesting. And by the way, for people who think that Joshua is all about battles, chapters 6 through 12 are really about it. There's only about 6 chapters, about a dozen chapters of actual battles. There's only really 3 that are talked about. The rest of the book is about settling the land and about being obedient to God. And so what is the key in the battles that we fight? Not in the fight that we do, but in the God who fights for us. Our responsibility is to be obedient to God and to follow what he says. So I hope this brings you some encouragement when you face battles you don't think you can win. When you face battles that seem too great for you, relax. Just focus on what God has called you to do and who's called you to be. God will take care of it. You can trust him. God bless you.